My name is Kristen Hale. I am 52 years old, a retired literature teacher who thought the rest of my life would be quiet and predictable. I never expected that my husband's death would pull me into a story more tangled than anything I ever taught in a classroom. I never imagined that a folded letter, a brass key, and a lawyer's solemn voice would change the way my daughter looked at me, or the way I looked at myself. The morning of the will reading, the air outside was heavy with late summer heat. Yet inside Harold Price's office, the chill of silence pressed harder. My daughter Leah sat beside me, her hands clasped so tightly I could see her knuckles whiten. She was 28, sharp, ambitious, working in marketing, and for all her confidence in the world, she looked almost like a child again, waiting for a truth she was not sure she wanted to hear. Harold adjusted his glasses and spoke with that measured tone only a lawyer of 4 decades could hold steady. Kristen, Leah, your husband and father left clear instructions. He wanted you both to know that there is a property in Sonoma County, an estate valued at $18 million. He wrote that you have never stepped foot inside, Kristen, because he forbade it. But now, he insists you must. My heart stumbled. For 24 years of marriage, Ethan had drawn an invisible line around that place, warning me never to cross it. A forbidden villa, locked and silent in the rolling hills of California. And now, with him gone, I was being told it was mine. Ours. Harold opened a small velvet pouch and placed a heavy brass key on the desk. It glimmered under the office light, catching the reflection of Leah's wide eyes. Along with this, he continued, sliding forward a sealed envelope, Ethan left you a personal letter. He said inside that house, you will find the truth about Leah. His words, not mine. The envelope trembled in my hands before I even broke the seal. Ethan's familiar handwriting curved across the page. Kristen, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer able to protect you from the past. You and Leah must open the house. What waits inside will explain everything. Do not delay. I swallowed hard, unable to breathe past the weight of those lines. Beside me, Leah leaned closer. Mom, what does he mean? The truth about me? I could not answer. The silence itself seemed to grow teeth. Harold cleared his throat again, his voice less steady this time. There is something else. The Mason family, your husband's brothers, have already filed a notice of intended proceedings with the county court. You have 72 hours to respond, or they will move to contest the inheritance. 72 hours, 3 days to step into a world Ethan had always kept shut away. 3 days to find answers that could shatter or save us. Leah gripped my arm, her voice trembling. Mom, why would Dad hide a place like that from you for all these years? And why now? I stared at the key, its cold edges biting against my palm, and I knew only one thing. Whatever secret Ethan left behind, it was waiting for us in that locked house. If I had known what lay behind that door, I might have left the key untouched. But some doors open themselves the moment you are brave enough to hold the handle. And once opened, there is no turning back. Before I continue, let me ask you, the one listening now, have you ever uncovered something about someone you loved that made you question whether you truly knew them? If you have, then you will understand why I couldn't walk away. Stay with me, because what I found inside that villa was not only about my husband. It was about my daughter, about me, and about the very meaning of family. I folded the letter carefully and slid it into my purse. The clock was already ticking, and the Mason brothers would not wait politely. I looked at Leah and forced my voice steady. Pack a bag. We're going to Sonoma. Tonight. As we left Harold's office, the brass key weighed down my pocket like an anchor. Yet in some strange way, it also felt like the first true map I had ever been given. Ethan was gone, but the story he had hidden was about to unfold, one page at a time, inside the walls he once called forbidden. And so, with grief still raw and questions clawing at our hearts, Leah and I stepped into a car that would carry us toward a villa we had never seen, but which already owned us more than we owned it. I didn't know it yet, but that night, standing before its locked doors, the past would reach out and place its hand squarely on my shoulder. The road to Sonoma twisted through vineyards and golden hills that glowed under the late sun. I kept my hands tight on the steering wheel, as if gripping hard enough could steady my racing thoughts. Leah sat beside me, scrolling through her phone. But every few minutes, she would glance at me with that same question in her eyes. She hadn't dared to speak since Harold's office. What did Dad mean about me? By the time we reached the gates, night had begun to fall. The wrought iron entrance loomed against the dim sky, a crest carved into the center. Ethan's family emblem, one I had seen only once before on his father's funeral program. For years I had imagined this place like a shadow on the map of our marriage, never to be visited, never to be touched. Now here it stood, daring me to turn the key. I pulled the car into the gravel drive. The house rose at the end, like something out of a dream Ethan had kept locked away. Tall, Spanish-style arches, ivy climbing up white walls, windows dark and watching. Leah whispered, "It's beautiful and terrifying." The key was cold as I slipped it into the heavy oak door. The lock turned with a groan, as if protesting the trespass. The door swung open, and a breath of air, stale with years of silence, brushed past us. We stepped inside. At first, the entryway seemed ordinary. A polished floor, a staircase that curved upward, dust motes drifting in the shaft of light from my phone. But then my eyes adjusted, and the house began to reveal itself. Room after room stretched out like a secret world Ethan had built, one I had never been invited to see. Leah walked ahead, her steps echoing. She opened a door to the right and gasped. I followed and froze in the doorway. The room was a library, walls lined with shelves reaching to the ceiling, filled with books Ethan had collected. But it wasn't the books that stopped me. Hanging above the fireplace was a painting, my painting, one I had done in college when Ethan and I had just met. I stepped closer, trembling. The brushstrokes, the colors. I remembered the night I had painted it in a rented studio where Ethan had first kissed me. I had sold it at a student auction, never expecting to see it again. Yet here it was, framed and cared for. And it wasn't alone. Along the walls, leaning against shelves, stacked carefully in corners were more. Every painting, every sketch I had ever made in those early years. Leah touched a frame, her eyes wide. "Mom, he collected them all." I felt my throat tighten. For so long, I had believed Ethan wanted me to leave art behind, to bury that part of myself in order to teach, to raise Leah, to build the life we thought we had. Yet here, hidden in this forbidden house, he had preserved everything. The air seemed to hum with his presence. I reached out and ran my fingers along the canvas, almost expecting his hand to cover mine. Instead, a voice came from behind us. "Mrs. Hale?" We turned. At the threshold stood a woman in her mid-60s, dressed in a neat gray uniform, her hair tied back, her expression both cautious and kind. She carried herself with the ease of someone who belonged here. "I'm Margot Lane," she said softly. "I've been taking care of this house for a long time. Ethan asked me to keep it ready for you." Leah and I exchanged a stunned glance. Ready for us? Ethan had never spoken a word of her, never mentioned a housekeeper guarding this secret life. Margot stepped into the light, her gaze warm but edged with something I couldn't place. "There's more he wanted you to see. This is only the beginning." I looked back at the walls of my paintings, each one a piece of myself I thought lost forever. My chest ached with questions that swirled louder than words. Why had Ethan hidden them here? Why now, after all these years, had he chosen for me to see? The key had opened more than a door. It had opened a truth Ethan had protected, a truth that now belonged to Leah and me to uncover. Margot led us deeper into the villa. The air was heavy with old wood and faint lavender polish, as if the rooms had been waiting in silence for years. She guided us to a study tucked behind the library, its desk neat but layered with folders Ethan had clearly arranged with care. My hands trembled as I reached for the top file. Leah stood at my side, biting her lip as I pulled out a thick envelope stamped with a seal. Inside was a document I could barely comprehend at first glance. A royalty trust agreement for $9 million. My breath caught when I read the line in bold type, "Payable to Leah Hale upon proof of guardianship and adoption." I read it again, slower, my vision blurring. Ethan had set aside $9 million in oil royalties, bound not just to Leah as his child, but tied to something deeper. Guardianship, adoption. Why had he chosen those words? What truth about Leah was buried in this paper? Leah touched my arm, her voice shaking. "Mom, what does this mean? Adoption? Are they saying I'm not—" She couldn't finish. Her eyes searched mine for an answer I did not yet have. Before I could speak, the sound of tires crunching against gravel echoed from outside. Margot stiffened, her expression darkening. "They're here." I moved to the window just in time to see headlights cutting across the drive. A sleek black car pulled up, then another. 3 men stepped out, their presence as commanding as the estate itself. I recognized them at once, though I had only ever seen them in photographs or from a distance at Ethan's father's funeral. The Mason brothers. Victor Mason, tall, broad-shouldered, his suit sharp, but his eyes shadowed with something restless. Paul, more refined, carrying a leather briefcase as if it were an extension of his arm. And Seth, the youngest, wiry, his gaze scanning every detail of the house as though he were cataloging it. Leah's voice was barely a whisper. "Dad's brothers." The front doors opened without hesitation, their footsteps bold against the marble. Victor's voice carried first, smooth yet heavy with command. "Kristen, Leah, we heard you finally came to the villa. Thought it was time we had a family conversation." I stepped forward, my pulse loud in my ears. "This house belongs to Ethan, and now to us. You have no right to walk in uninvited." Victor's lips curled into something between a smile and a sneer. "You're mistaken. Ethan may have left you keys, but he also left obligations. We know about the royalty trust, $9 million earmarked for Leah. We're here to help her claim what is rightfully hers." Paul placed his briefcase on the desk and snapped it open with practiced precision. He slid out documents, flipping them toward Leah with the ease of a seasoned litigator. Your mother has no claim over what Ethan intended for you, Leah. The trust is clear. All you need is recognition from the family, from us. We can make that happen. Seth leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, his eyes darting between the files and the screensaver flickering on Ethan's old laptop. His smile was thin, calculated. Leah glanced down at the papers, then up at me, torn between loyalty and the pull of their confident certainty. Mom, is this true? Do they really have a say in this? I shook my head, though doubt coiled in my chest. Leah, listen to me. Your father left this for you. He wanted me to be the one to guide you through it. Victor stepped closer, lowering his voice as though offering a kindness. Or perhaps he wanted you to finally accept that Leah is part of us, part of Mason blood. Don't fight it, Kristen. She deserves the truth and the inheritance that comes with it. The room seemed to shrink around us. Leah's hands shook as she looked from their faces to mine, from the papers on the desk to the key still clenched in my palm. The very air pulsed with a choice waiting to be made, a line ready to be crossed. Margot stood silently by the doorway, her presence steady, but her jaw tight with anger. She had known them, I realized, had seen them long before I ever would. Her eyes met mine, warning me without words. This was only the beginning. As Victor's hand brushed the file with Leah's name on it, I felt the house itself tighten around me, every secret pressing to the surface. Whatever truth Ethan had left inside these walls, it was bigger than $9 million. And it was about to be tested by the family he had tried to keep from us all. That night, the villa was quiet, yet I could not sleep. Leah had retreated to a guest room, leaving me alone in the study, with the files spread like scattered pieces of a puzzle. The royalty trust agreement lay on the desk, its words heavy and cruel in their suggestion. Adoption. Guardianship. I had replayed them in my mind until they blurred into something sharper than grief. I noticed Ethan's old laptop sitting in the corner, its surface layered with dust. My hand hesitated above it. For so many years, Ethan had locked away pieces of himself, pieces I had begged him to share. Now, with nothing left but silence, I wondered if this machine still carried his voice. The screen flickered to life after a slow hum. A folder appeared on the desktop for Kristen and Leah. My chest tightened. With trembling fingers, I clicked. The first video filled the screen. Ethan sat at a wooden desk, the light falling soft across his worn face. His hair was grayer than I remembered in his final days, his eyes shadowed with the weight of secrets. He looked directly at the camera, and for a moment it felt as though he was looking straight through me. "My Kristen, my Leah," he began, his voice catching. "If you're watching this, I'm gone. I need you to hear what I couldn't say when I was still with you." I pressed my hand to my lips, the sound of his voice a knife through the quiet. Leah must have heard it too, because footsteps creaked across the floor, and she appeared in the doorway. She froze when she saw the screen, then slowly stepped in, her eyes wet. She slid into the chair beside me, clutching my arm. Ethan continued, his words uneven. "I've lived with a shadow over me all my life. The Mason name is a burden, a disease of pride and greed. I thought keeping you both away from this house would spare you. I thought silence was protection." He drew a shaky breath. "But silence only grows heavier until it breaks. I couldn't bear for you to carry what I've carried." The camera trembled slightly, as though his hand shook when he adjusted it. His expression softened, and for a moment, the man I had loved shone through. Kristen, you gave me a life worth living, even when I didn't deserve it. And Leah? His voice broke. Leah, you are not. He stopped, pressing his hand to his chest. He closed his eyes before forcing himself onward. You are not a mistake. You were never a coincidence. You were the answer to a prayer I thought would never be heard. Leah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Her tears fell silently, her body tense against mine. Mom, what is he saying? What does he mean? I could not answer. I only held her hand tighter, as if that could steady us both. Ethan leaned closer to the camera. The truth is in this house. I left it here for you to uncover, because only together can you face what it means. And Kristen, forgive me for every locked door, for every time I turned away when you asked. I wasn't rejecting you. I was protecting you. Or at least, I thought I was. The screen went black. Leah broke the silence first, her voice trembling. He knew. All along, he knew something. About me. I closed the laptop gently, afraid of breaking the weight of the moment. The room felt smaller, as though Ethan's ghost lingered in every corner. I wanted to scream at him, to demand answers he had carried to the grave. Yet beneath the anger was a current of love, aching and unyielding, reminding me of the man who had both sheltered and shut me out. Leah turned to me, her eyes red but searching. Mom, if Dad left more videos, we have to watch them. We have to know everything. I nodded, though fear burned in my chest. We will, but not tonight. Tonight, we hold on to what he gave us, even if it hurts. I touched her cheek, brushing away the tears. Whatever this secret is, Leah, we'll face it together. But even as I said it, I felt the fracture widening between us, the Mason brothers' voices echoing like ghosts in her mind. Somewhere deep down, I feared Ethan's words had planted more questions than answers, and that tomorrow, those questions would no longer be ours alone to ask. The morning light spilled through the villa's tall windows, but it brought no peace. Leah had already dressed by the time I came down the stairs, her movements sharp, restless, like a bird beating against glass. On the table lay a folder that hadn't been there the night before. I didn't need to open it to know who had left it. The Mason brothers had returned. Victor's voice carried from the veranda before I saw him. Smooth, coaxing, the kind of tone that made poison sound like honey. Leah, you deserve to know where you come from. You deserve recognition, not secrets. Your father was too weak to tell you, but we won't be. I stepped outside to find Leah standing between Victor and Paul, her arms folded, chin lifted. Seth lingered near the garden wall, his phone in his hand, eyes flicking toward us with calculated detachment. Paul adjusted his tie, his briefcase already open on the table. The trust can't be claimed without proof. We can petition the court. If you align with us, Leah, we can ensure you receive your share of the villa. A third, at minimum. That's $6 million without lifting a finger. Leah's jaw tightened, her voice wavering despite her bravado. And if I don't? Victor's smile was almost tender. Then you risk losing it all. Your mother has already shown she wants to keep you away from the truth. We can change that. We can make you part of our family. The words cut through me sharper than any blade. Part of your family, I snapped, stepping forward. You kept Ethan under your thumb his entire life. You poisoned everything he touched. Don't you dare pretend to care for Leah. Victor's eyes flicked toward me, dark with disdain. Kristen, You've always been the outsider. Ethan tolerated you, but you never belonged in Mason affairs. Leah does. She carries our blood. Leah's gaze darted between us, her breathing quick. Mom, is it true? Did Dad keep me from them because of you? Or because he didn't want me to know something about myself? My throat closed. The memory of Ethan's broken words in the video still clung to me. You were not a mistake. You were the answer to a prayer. But what prayer? I had no answer that could soothe her. Paul slid a document across the table toward Leah. This is a memorandum of understanding, not binding yet, just a signal of intent. You sign this, and we'll proceed to formal recognition. Everything will move quickly. You'll finally have what Ethan denied you. Leah's hands hovered over the pen. My heart pounded. Leah, no. Don't let them use you. Your father wanted us to face this together. Whatever truth is in this house, it's for you and me, not them. But Victor leaned closer, lowering his voice as if whispering a secret meant only for her. You've wondered your whole life why your mother never brought you here, why Ethan forbade her. She can't give you answers. We can. Leah's shoulders shook. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then slowly, she picked up the pen. The scratch of ink across paper felt like thunder in my chest. She had signed. I staggered back, the world tilting. Leah. She couldn't look at me. Her voice cracked as she said, maybe this is the only way to finally know who I am. The Mason brothers exchanged a satisfied glance, as if a piece of their game had fallen neatly into place. Behind me, I heard hurried footsteps. Nora Kim, Leah's best friend, appeared at the gate, her face pale with urgency. She rushed forward, clutching Leah's arm. What are you doing? These men don't care about you. They only care about money. Blood doesn't make family, Leah. Loyalty does. Remember that. Leah pulled away, torn between Nora's plea and Victor's steady presence. Her silence screamed louder than any words. I reached for her hand, but she stepped back, the gap between us wide and unyielding. For the first time since Ethan's death, I felt the weight of being truly alone. That evening, the villa seemed to breathe heavier, as if the walls themselves knew what had been signed on the veranda. I moved through the halls with a restlessness I couldn't quiet. Leah had withdrawn to her room, her voice muffled on a call I guessed was with Nora. I wanted to reach for her, but the sting of her signature still burned too deep. Margot appeared in the corridor, her face drawn, but determined. She held a lantern in one hand, its light flickering across the old plaster. Mrs. Hale, she whispered, glancing toward Leah's door. There is something Ethan wanted you to see. He called it the war room. He told me never to open it until you came. I followed her down a narrow staircase I had never noticed before. The air grew cooler with each step, the stone walls closing in, until we reached a heavy steel door tucked behind shelves of cleaning supplies. Margot pulled a key from her pocket, its teeth worn smooth with age. With a creak that echoed down the stairwell, the door swung open. The room inside was unlike anything I had expected. Rows of filing cabinets lined the walls, their drawers labeled in Ethan's neat handwriting. Maps were pinned to corkboards, red lines drawn across acres of land. In the center stood a large oak table covered in documents. The air smelled faintly of ink and old leather, the scent of secrets long guarded. Margot set the lantern down and gestured to the files. He gathered everything, every slip, every fraud his brothers committed. He knew one day you would need proof. I opened a drawer marked Victor, Investment Records. Inside were copies of wire transfers, false ledgers, loans disguised as family distributions. Another drawer held Paul's documents, deeds with missing notarized pages, contracts altered with precision. Seth's drawer revealed surveillance invoices, drone receipts, even blueprints of the villa itself. At the far end of the table lay a rolled map. My hands shook as I spread it flat. It was of the Western Acres, the land Ethan had fought to keep outside Mason control. Bold marks traced the soil samples, the wells, the estimates of oil reserves. Not millions, tens of millions, far beyond the 9 million royalty trust. Margot's voice softened. He told me once this land was the true legacy, not money, not titles. He wanted Leah safe from their greed. That's why he hid it here. The lantern, light flickered across the map, and in that moment I felt both awe and dread. Ethan had not simply kept a house from me. He had been fighting a war I never knew existed, arming me with the weapons I now held in my hands. Behind us, a floorboard creaked. I turned sharply, the lantern casting long shadows against the wall. Leah stood at the threshold, her face pale, her eyes wide as they darted from the map to the cabinets. She had seen everything. Her lips parted, but no words came. For a heartbeat, the air was thick with silence. Our eyes locked across the room. She was caught between the papers she had just signed upstairs and the truth glowing here in the lamplight. "Leah," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Your father built this for you. For us. Not for them." Her hands clenched at her sides, torn by the weight of what she had chosen only hours before. The silence stretched until it felt like the whole house was holding its breath, waiting for her answer. But Leah only turned, her footsteps retreating quickly up the stairs. The echo of her flight left the room colder than before. I lowered my eyes back to the map, the ink lines burning into my vision. Ethan had left me the key, the files, the proof. Yet none of it would matter if Leah could not see where she truly belonged. The following afternoon, the villa transformed into something it had never been before. The long dining table in the great hall was cleared of china and polished wood, replaced with files, contracts, and maps. Chairs were pulled into formation as if the house itself had become a courtroom. The Mason brothers arrived first, each carrying the confidence of men who believed the outcome was already theirs. Not far behind them came Harold Price, briefcase in hand, his expression grave. And then, as if summoned by the scent of opportunity, 2 executives from Northern Extraction strode in, strangers with sharp suits and sharper eyes. Leah sat across from me, silent, her face pale. She would not meet my gaze, but I felt her turmoil radiating across the table. The memory of her signature yesterday hung like a storm cloud over us both. Victor leaned forward, spreading a glossy map across the table. Northern Extraction has reviewed our proposal. They're prepared to invest heavily in the development of the Western Acres. With Leah aligned to our family, the deal is virtually complete. He tapped the paper, his ring clicking against the surface. 18 million in estate value is nothing compared to what we can generate here. Hundreds of millions, Kristen. Don't stand in the way of progress. The CEO of Northern Extraction nodded curtly, sliding a contract across to Harold. "We are ready to move forward pending signatures. The Masons have assured us all heirs are in agreement." I steadied my breath, forcing myself to meet their smug assurance with calm. "You assume too much," I said, my voice low but steady. I reached beneath the table and lifted Ethan's rolled map. the one from the war room. Spreading it across their proposal, I let the lantern light catch the red lines Ethan had drawn. This is the true survey. Independent testing. Notarized. Dated. Northern Extraction is not the only company interested. Western Plains Energy has already made inquiries. The room stiffened. The CEO leaned closer, his brows knitting as he compared Ethan's data to Victor's polished map. The numbers were not just different. They were damning. Paul tried to recover, his lawyer's polish cracking at the edges. Those documents could be fabricated. Without notarization, they are meaningless. Before he could slide them aside, Harold spoke, his voice carrying the weight of a gavel. I can confirm these records. I notarized Ethan's surveys myself, and I have copies filed with the county deed office. Any attempt to present altered versions will be seen as fraud. Victor's face drained of color. Seth shifted uneasily in his chair, his hand tightening around his phone as though reaching for control he no longer held. The Northern Extraction CEO closed the contract folder with a sharp snap. His voice was cold, clipped. If what I'm seeing is true, then your family has misrepresented assets to secure investment. That constitutes fraud. Northern Extraction will not be involved. He stood, his associate following. Within seconds, they were gone. The echo of their footsteps leaving the hall thick with silence. Victor slammed his hand against the table, the sound rattling through the room. You think this makes you strong, Kristen. You think one piece of paper can erase decades of Mason blood. I met his fury with nothing more than steady eyes. Not one piece of paper. The truth. The kind your brother tried to bury and Ethan fought to preserve. This house isn't your battleground anymore. It's ours. For the first time, Leah's eyes lifted to mine. Uncertainty still shadowed her, but I saw something shift, something fragile but real. The chains of their persuasion no longer looked so unbreakable. Paul gathered his papers in a rush, his hands stiff with anger. Seth muttered under his breath, his gaze cutting toward Leah with a mixture of frustration and calculation. Victor lingered a moment longer, his chest heaving, before storming out into the courtyard. When the heavy doors closed behind them, the villa exhaled a silence so deep it felt like the first breath after drowning. Harold placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Ethan armed you well, Kristen. But this fight isn't over. They will come back, and they will come harder. I nodded, my eyes drifting to Leah. She looked away, tears shining in the corners of her eyes. She had not spoken, but her silence no longer felt like betrayal. It felt like the first crack in the wall the Masons had built around her. Night fell heavy over the villa after the confrontation. The halls that had echoed with voices now sank into uneasy quiet. I thought the Mason brothers had left for good, but just past midnight, a knock sounded at the door. It was not the loud, entitled knock of men staking a claim. It was slow, uneven, almost desperate. When I opened it, Victor stood there alone. His tailored suit was wrinkled, his tie askew, and his face pale beneath the porch light. For the first time, he looked less like a man of power and more like a man hollowed out. Kristen, he rasped, clutching at his chest as though steadying himself. Please, I need to speak with Leah. I started to close the door, but his next words froze me. It's life or death. Leah appeared behind me, drawn by the urgency in his voice. She crossed her arms, wary, but I saw the flicker of unease in her eyes. Victor staggered inside and collapsed into a chair. A younger man in a white coat stepped in after him, carrying a medical bag, his private physician. The doctor wasted no time. pulling out charts, murmuring about test results. Words like cardiomyopathy, end stage, donor match filled the air like a foreign language that only translated to dread. Victor's hand trembled as he reached toward Leah. It's genetic, Leah. The same condition that killed our father, the same one Ethan carried. I don't have long, but you might be able to save me. You could be my match. Leah's breath caught. She backed away, shaking her head. No, you're lying. You're just trying to pull me back into your game. The doctor interjected, clinical and calm. Miss Hale, a simple blood test would confirm compatibility. If you share the rare subtype, you could be the only one who can donate what he needs. I stepped between them, fury rising like fire. You've bled this family for decades, Victor, and now you want to bleed my daughter too? No, absolutely not. Victor's voice cracked, no longer smooth, no longer in control. I've done terrible things, but this isn't strategy, it's survival. Leah, I don't want to die knowing my own blood refused me. Leah stood frozen, her eyes glistening, her body torn between compassion and betrayal. I wanted to shield her, to carry her away from his plea, but I could see the war in her face. The same war Ethan must have felt every day of his life under Mason's shadow. Then Margot appeared quietly in the doorway, holding something in her hands. An envelope, its seal unbroken, the handwriting on it unmistakable. Ethan's. She looked at me with eyes heavy with sorrow. There was another letter, she whispered. One he left hidden, in case this moment came. Leah reached for it before I could. Her fingers shook as she tore it open, scanning the first lines aloud through trembling lips. Leah, if you are reading this, it means the past has come for you in a way I feared it would. The Masons will ask for what you cannot give. Remember, you were never my only child. The room fell into stunned silence. Leah's hands dropped to her sides, the letter slipping toward the floor. The weight of Ethan's words pressed down on us all. Not his only child. The meaning crashed over me like a wave, reshaping everything we thought we knew. Victor's breath hitched, his face twisting with confusion and fear. Leah's eyes darted to mine, searching for answers I didn't yet have. And in that moment, I understood. Ethan's greatest secret had not yet been revealed. The dawn crept slowly over the vineyards, painting the villa in pale gold. But none of us had slept. Ethan's letter lay open on the table, its words echoing in the silence like a bell that would not stop ringing. You were never my only child. Leah sat rigid, her eyes hollow from crying. Victor slumped weakly in his chair, the doctor pacing with impatience. I could feel the house itself pressing down, as though it knew another truth was waiting to step through its doors. The knock came just after sunrise. Firm, deliberate, not like Victor's desperate plea from the night before. When I opened the door, a man stood framed against the morning light. He was tall, his hair threaded with gray, his clothes simple, worn jeans, a weathered jacket. His eyes, though, stopped me cold. They were Ethan's eyes. My name is Daniel, he said quietly, his voice rough as gravel. I believe you've been expecting me, though you didn't know it. Leah rose from her chair, disbelief written across her face. Who are you? He stepped inside, his hands open, empty. I'm your father's son, born long before he met your mother, left behind when the Masons decided there wasn't enough to go around. I've spent my life on the outside, watching from shadows, waiting for the day the truth couldn't be buried anymore. The words struck like a hammer. My knees nearly gave way as I clutched the edge of the table. Ethan, my Ethan, had carried another child all these years. And yet, as I looked at Daniel's face, I saw not betrayal, but pain, carved deep by years of abandonment. Leah shook her head, her voice sharp. "No, that can't be. Dad never said." "He never—" Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed with time. "He couldn't, but he found me. This is his handwriting, his signature. He promised that one day he would bring me back into the family, if not for himself then for you." Leah took the letter, her hands trembling, scanning Ethan's familiar script. Her lips moved silently as she read, and then her shoulders crumpled. She looked at me, tears breaking free again. "Mom, he's telling the truth." Victor pushed himself upright, though his strength was fading. "If you're really Ethan's son, prove it. Words mean nothing without blood." Daniel's eyes hardened, but he nodded. "I already know. I carry the same rare blood type. The doctors tested me years ago when I donated anonymously. It matches yours, Victor." The physician's head snapped up, startled. "If that's true, then he could be a viable donor. It might be your only chance." The irony hung heavy in the room. Victor, who had wielded bloodline as a weapon, now faced survival only through the half-brother he had never acknowledged. Leah stepped closer to Daniel, her voice breaking. "All these years, I thought I was alone in carrying Dad's secrets. But you're my brother." Daniel's expression softened. "Family isn't about who they let sit at the table. It's about who shows up when everything falls apart. I didn't come here for money or land. I came because I couldn't let the lies swallow you too." I reached out, my hand brushing Leah's arm. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw something shift. The weight of Mason manipulation, the lure of their recognition, seemed to fall away. In its place was a clarity that shone through her tears. "Mom," she whispered, gripping my hand tightly. "Family is the choice we make, isn't it? Not the blood they claim binds us." For the first time since Ethan's death, I felt a fragile sense of peace flicker to life. His secrets had cut us open, but in their rawness, something new had emerged. Daniel wasn't just a shadow of Ethan's past. He was a bridge to a future that the Masons could never control. Victor bowed his head, beaten not by contracts or courts, but by the truth he could no longer bend. And in the golden light of that morning, standing in the house that had once been forbidden, I realized Ethan had given us more than keys or papers. He had given us a family we hadn't known we were waiting for. That evening, the villa was hushed except for the soft rustle of leaves outside. The battles of contracts and accusations had quieted, but inside, Leah's eyes still carried storms. She sat at the desk where Ethan's laptop rested, holding another envelope Margot had found in a locked drawer. It was addressed to her alone. Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal. I stayed close, not to intrude, but because I knew she would need me. Daniel lingered in the corner, silent, as if guarding the space. Leah unfolded the letter. Ethan's familiar handwriting curved across the page. Every stroke weighted with the love he had never fully spoken. She drew a shaky breath and began to read aloud, her voice breaking on the first line. "My sweet Leah, if you hold this letter, it means I failed to say what I should have while alive. I was afraid the truth would make you feel less, when in truth, it makes you more. I kept the villa from your mother because I wanted to spare her the Mason cruelty. And I kept parts of myself from you Because I thought it would protect you. But secrets do not protect. They wound in silence. Leah's tears dripped onto the page, smudging the ink. She pressed her hand to her mouth, then forced herself to continue. You may hear words like adoption, guardianship. They do not change what you are. You are my daughter, not by accident, not by charity. You are the answer to prayers I once whispered into empty nights. You are my joy, my redemption, my proof that love can survive the poison of my bloodline. Her voice cracked. She lowered the letter, staring at the floor as if the words themselves were too heavy to carry. Why did Dad leave me behind? She whispered hoarsely, more to herself than to anyone else. Then she turned to me, her face raw, vulnerable, almost childlike again. Why, Mom? Why didn't he tell me sooner? I gathered her into my arms, cradling her as I had when she was small. My own tears blurred my vision. Because he knew I would never leave you. He trusted me to hold you even when he could not. He made mistakes, Leah, but loving you was never one of them. She clung to me, sobbing into my shoulder, the years of doubt and questions pouring out at last. Daniel stepped closer, laying a hand gently on her back, his voice quiet but steady. You weren't abandoned, Leah. You were hidden from a war, but now the truth is here, and it doesn't take you away from your family. It makes it bigger. Leah pulled back enough to look at me. Her eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, shone with something fierce beneath the grief. I don't want anything from the Masons. Not their money, not their name. I choose you, Mom. I choose us. The words hit deeper than any verdict in court. They were her declaration, her line drawn in the sand. The house that had once been forbidden no longer felt like Ethan's cage of secrets. It was becoming a place where healing could begin. I kissed her forehead, holding her tight. That's all I ever needed to hear. For the first time in weeks, the villa's silence felt lighter, like a burden had been set down. The secrets had been read aloud, and though the scars would linger, Leah had found her choice, her truth, and she had chosen me. A week later, the sky over Sonoma was the kind of blue that seems almost reverent, the kind that makes silence feel holy. Leah and I drove together to the cemetery where Ethan had been laid to rest. Daniel came with us, though he hung back quietly, understanding that this moment belonged to us first. The path to Ethan's grave wound through rows of oaks, their branches swaying as if whispering a hymn. When we reached his headstone, Leah stopped short. Her hand sought mine, and I felt the tremor in her grip. The stone was simple. His name, his years, and a verse he had chosen long before he knew how short his life would be. I knelt and pulled the wedding band from my finger. For weeks, I had felt its weight like an anchor, but now, as I set it gently against the cold marble, it felt like a release. Leah unfolded her father's letter once more, the same one that had broken her open and stitched her together in a single night. She smoothed it carefully and laid it beside the ring. "Dad," she whispered, "I forgive you, and I'll keep what you gave me. Not the money, not the secrets, but the love you tried to hide. I'll carry that." Her voice cracked, and I gathered her close. Tears came hot and unrelenting, but for the first time they didn't taste of bitterness. They were tears of letting go. Behind us, I heard soft footsteps. Nora appeared, her eyes gentle, her presence steady as always. She touched Leah's shoulder, her words quiet but sure. Family isn't the ones who fight over what you leave behind. It's the ones who stay when the world strips everything else away. Leah turned and hugged her sobs softening into something steadier. I looked at them both, at Daniel standing a little further away with his head bowed, and I felt a circle forming where once there had only been fracture. The wind lifted, carrying the scent of grass and wildflowers. I closed my eyes and let the sound of it wash over me. For all the years Ethan had silenced me with his secrets, here, at his grave, I finally found my own voice. "Rest, Ethan," I whispered. "We'll carry forward what matters, and we'll turn this place of endings into something new." Leah straightened, wiping her face with the back of her hand. She looked at me with eyes clearer than I had ever seen them. "Mom, I don't want to sell the villa. I want to keep it. We can make it something good, something that outlives all of this." I nodded, pride swelling in my chest. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll make it a sanctuary, not a battlefield." As we walked back down the path, the headstone behind us glimmered under the afternoon sun. For the first time since Ethan's death, my steps felt lighter. We had laid down the weight of secrets, and in their place, we carried a promise. The villa no longer felt like a fortress of secrets. Weeks had passed since the cemetery, and slowly, the house had begun to breathe differently. Leah and I worked together to clear out the dust of years, Daniel visiting often, Margot still tending to the halls with her quiet devotion. What once held only shadows now carried the sound of voices, laughter even, drifting through open windows. One evening, I set up an easel in the grand hall. For years, I had packed away my paints, convinced that part of me belonged only to the past. But surrounded by the canvases Ethan had preserved, I felt the call return. Leah watched quietly from the staircase, a soft smile on her face as I began. Brush to canvas, I poured into it everything we had lost and everything we had found again. The painting grew over days. At its heart, I painted 3 figures on horseback, moving forward through golden hills. One was a woman, her hair lifted by wind. Another, a young woman riding close by. And beside them, a man whose presence was strong but softened, as though made of light. Behind them, in the horizon, I left the faint suggestion of a child running through fields. No face, just the blur of possibility. It was a promise of what might come, generations not yet born. When I finally set down the brush, Margot entered quietly. She studied the canvas, her eyes glistening. "Beauty," she whispered, "outlives wills, outlives contracts. This is the legacy that cannot be stolen." Leah stepped closer, slipping her arm through mine. Her voice trembled, but it carried certainty. "Mom, this house doesn't have to be a battlefield anymore. We can make it a refuge, a sanctuary." I looked at her, my heart swelling with pride and love. "Then that's what we'll do. This villa will no longer be forbidden. It will be ours, a place for healing, for memory, for beginning again." Daniel, standing near the doorway, nodded. His presence no longer felt like a ghost from Ethan's past, but like a bridge to the future. "Family isn't blood alone," he said softly. "It's the choice to stand together." That night, as the sun set and the last light filled the hall, I sat before the painting with Leah and Daniel at my side. Margot lit the lamps, and the glow made the colors on the canvas come alive, as though Ethan himself had stepped into the room to watch. In the quiet, I spoke words I had carried silently for too long. Family is not something you inherit by blood. Family is the choice you make every day. And as those words settled into the walls, the villa ceased to be a prison of secrets. It became a sanctuary of truth, of love, of promise. Our sanctuary,